Life is all about survival, and we never really know how long each of us have on this planet. But our job as a species is to persevere and eliminate anything which may threaten our survival. So what's the biggest threat you can think of? Pollution, disease, natural disasters. You know, looking around, the powers that be seem to have identified some pretty nasty threats. And so we have the war on terror, the war on crime, the war on drugs, the war on cancer. But when do we ever think about our basic life support needs? We usually don't have to, because luckily for us, we have a system. A system whereby the cost of living can be earned. You can gain employment and work for money, which of course provides access to food, to water, to shelter. And it's a good thing we have this system, because without money, you're as good as dead. But if you're without a job, no need to worry, because, yeah, again, we have a system. If you're out of work, for whatever reason, simply apply for government aid. See, all the people with jobs pay taxes. And since the government understands that a certain level of unemployment is to some degree to be expected, they simply dip into some of that tax money and hand it over to those without jobs through a magical process called redistribution. But it kind of makes you wonder, if this is our big solution to unemployment, where's the threshold? What level of unemployment can we really sustain? And what would happen if all these jobs suddenly disappeared?
The world is facing an urgent challenge and needs to create, listen to this number, needs to create 600 million jobs to generate growth and maintain social cohesion.
Defence giant BAE Systems has confirmed it's cutting almost 3,000 jobs at sites across the country.
Tata Steel, which employs 90,000 people in its UK steel business, has announced it is cutting 900 jobs around the UK.
Another blow to the region's economy today as the energy giant E.ON announced that 600 jobs are to go at a call centre in Essex.
The Pfizer facility in Kent, the world's biggest drugs company, runs the UK's largest foreign-owned research and development facility. It will close entirely with the loss of most of 2,400 jobs.
Ford has announced to trade union representatives that it will cease manufacturing cars in the UK after more than 100 years.
Japan's Honda is to cut around 800 jobs at its plant near Swindon in southwest England.
And we start tonight with news that the BBC has announced cuts and job losses across the region as part of a plan to make 20% savings.
Hundreds of police jobs have already been slashed, with thousands more under threat.
Kodak, the firm that invented the handheld camera and remains one of America's best-known brands, has filed for bankruptcy protection.
Rangers Football Club, one of the most famous in Britain, has announced it's gone into administration.
More than 300 of the 800 stores that Woolworths used to occupy are still standing empty more than a year and a half after it collapsed at the end of 2008.
More retailers are expected to go bust over the next few months.
All 187 outlets are to be shut, with the loss of almost 1,400 jobs. The administrator said it is apparent that we cannot continue to trade. It was once Britain's biggest sports retailer, but today JJB Sports announced plans to go into administration.
6,500 jobs are at risk after the electrical retailer Comet announced it's going into administration.
More than 4,000 jobs at risk after HMV announced that it was going into administration. It follows other chains.
It's Blockbuster. It's become the latest casualty on the high street this week. A quarter of its stores are going to close. More than 700 people are going to be made redundant.
There's serious doubts now about the future of around 6,000 jobs in the UK after the company asked for its shares to be suspended last Wednesday.
Former Stands employees have come to the decision to occupy the store as a direct consequence of the actions of management.
A buyer hasn't been found, and the group currently employs a total of nearly 4,000 staff.
Taiwan's IT giant Foxconn announced it plans to replace up to 500,000 human workers with robots in the next 3 years.
It's called Scan and Do Shop. Customers love it. Very simple system.
Each load is almost 300 tons. But look closely, there's no one behind the wheel.
The facility boasts the first robotic system in the UK to deliver supplies such as linen and food, and an automated robotic pharmacy.
井上さん、ミルクティーですね。岩下さん、オレンジジュースですね。
This isn't the first time unemployment has been a threat to this system. 20 years ago, unemployment accounted for 10% of the UK's population. It marked one of the worst recessions in our history, with significant waves of rioting. However, in '93, unemployment took a turn. Somehow the jobs came back and things got better. You know, this growth in employment is just what we needed. However, it only lasted till 2001. Then the rate stagnated, then increased. By 2009, we were back to around 8%. But it's reassuring to see the recent trends of unemployment have slowed since then. Or at least it would be reassuring if it weren't for this. This chart shows the trends of part-time versus full-time employment. Notice how the increase in part-time employment runs almost parallel to the decrease in full-time employment. So where one person may have been working, say, a 40-hour week contract, now two people would each be contracted 20 hours. And funnily enough, this crossover section occurred in 2009. So because technically more people are employed, the rates falsely imply a slight slowing down of job loss. But in reality, the amount of available work is shrinking, and the economy is only getting worse. So what happened last time we were in this mess? Let's go back to '93. What changed? Was it an orderly street protest which brought back the jobs? Perhaps it was some well thought out policy from Parliament that changed things. Maybe everyone just stopped being lazy and simultaneously arrived at the decision to go out there and get a job. But maybe it has something to do with technology. In '93, Microsoft released their Windows NT operating system. Intel developed the first Pentium processor. And the National Centre for Supercomputing Applications released version 1 of Mosaic, which was to be the world's first internet web browser. It's estimated that the internet grew throughout the 90s at a rate of 100% per year, subsequently improving global communication and creating many job possibilities within developed countries. Now, to remove any speculation as to whether or not this was the reason for the growth in jobs, it should be noted that throughout the 90s, our employment trends were almost identical to the US trends, and in a 2007 paper, a team of Harvard economists found the economic expansion of the 90s was in fact driven by the increased efficiency in the production of IT, including computing, software, and telecommunications. The birth of the internet had propelled us into a new age and saved us from further degradation. However, while emerging technology is responsible for having created many new jobs, technology has been known to replace jobs throughout history. When employment stagnated in 2001, this wasn't because technology had stopped expanding or that there weren't any new ideas. The stagnation is simply because technology is ever improving, and the amount of new jobs were being matched by the number of job losses. Economists will always deny that technology replaces jobs. It's called the lump of labour fallacy. Essentially, it's the notion that technology merely redistributes human workers. The jobs which become obsolete or automated simply allow humans to explore new sectors, perhaps even invent new industries which have yet to be conceived of. Well, while this idea may have been partially true in the past, the argument simply doesn't hold up anymore. Computers these days are much smaller, faster, and durable, with ever-increasing mobility, dexterity, and artificial intelligence. They also become cheaper as time goes on. Moore's law demonstrates how computer processing power doubles approximately every 18 months. So, even if we were to create new jobs, why are we pretending we would give these jobs to humans? So, what does the government have to say about all this? Well, in June of 2011, not knowing what to do with the increasing unemployment, they invested £5 billion in the Welfare to Work scheme, also known as the Work Programme. This 5-year programme promises to help 2.4 million people find and secure long-term employment by paying private companies to do the work of actually looking for jobs on behalf of their unemployed clients. 1 year later, the Department for Work and Pension released the figures. Turns out the work programme was a complete failure. Only 3.4% of all those who signed up to the programme actually found work. 3.4%. Let's just put that into context. What percentage of people looking for work gained employment without the help of the programme? 1%? 2%? Well, the figures from the same period show 5.5%. That's right. If you're assigned to the programme, you are statistically less likely to find a job. Now, the failure of the work programme can be largely attributed to the lack of available jobs. But perhaps there's another factor. In joining the programme, if you find a job, you forfeit your right to minimum wage employment. And in place, you are subsidised with an amount equivalent to job seekers' allowance, making the work programme essentially a paid slavery scheme, excused under the guise of gaining experience. In late 2012, university graduate Kate Riley disputed the legality of the programme after being assigned to stack shelves in Poundland. Initially, her appeal was rejected. However, after further appeal, by 2013, 3 judges had ruled the regulations under which most of the back-to-work schemes were created are unlawful. Now, whatever the government's response to this ruling will be, they will not stop in their efforts to resolve the threat of unemployment. But let's face it, unemployment is not a threat to this system for the reasons we are usually given by mainstream outlets. Forget all the noise about economic recession, benefit cheats, immigration, or the idea that people are simply too lazy to look for a job. Automation, thus technological unemployment, is a mathematical inevitability of a system based on perpetual growth. And this pending eventuality is vastly misunderstood by the majority. And not just the majority of voters. There isn't a single politician who acknowledges, let alone understands the implications of technological unemployment. And what's worse, when human beings don't understand something, that's where fear comes from. We fear what we don't understand, and we fight what we don't understand.
Okay, I have a very concrete question for you because you're getting wrapped up in this money and regulators and who was at fault. All right, technological automation is replacing jobs at the moment, and it has been forever. It's doubling every year. That's the rate, regardless of what financial system you have and what regulators you put in that place. So, without jobs as a basis for the economy, it's not really a question, more of a statement. Your system is going to be obsolete, and in fact, you're very lucky that you've been working this long because you get to get out at the last floor. It's going away.
Yeah, but on the other side of the coin, I fear for my children.
Absolutely, absolutely. So why are you a fan of the banks then?
Everybody's job.
In recent times, high street shops have been disappearing at staggering rates, taking thousands of jobs with them. First Quench Retailing, Woolworths, Hawkins Bazaar, D2 Jeans, Officers Club, Focus DIY, Blacks, Licenza, Best Buy Europe, Clinton Cards, Barrett's, Game Station, Comet, Optical Express, JGB Sports, Oddbins, Game Group, HMV, Jessup's, Ethel Austin, Blockbuster, and more. Now, it's obvious some of these stores have not disappeared entirely. Many have moved into warehouse distribution, and their stores still exist in the form of websites. You may also be wondering why I have included game in this list, since there are in fact game stores in the high streets today. Well, I do so to make a point. See, in 2012, when Game went bust, the Swedish Nordic Games acquiesced the Game Group, acquiring the brand as well as the company's stores and employee contracts. But this is actually a different company altogether. Game wasn't resurrected through strategical advertising, market booms, or stern administrative decisions. The company we all knew as Game went bust. It lost. But Game still had brand status. If it didn't, these shop fronts would read Nordic Games. So, why is there so much failure in retail? Are we merely witnessing the natural boom and bust cycles of free market economics? Or are we actually witnessing a retail transition? Looking back, our high streets consisted of small, family-owned businesses. But the more companies grow, mergers and acquisitions become inevitable, and the smaller stores get phased out as they struggle to compete for market share, eventually being replaced by conglomerates. In much the same way, a natural evolution of retail is occurring again. Only this time the shops are being phased out, and the replacement is coming in the form of websites and software applications, which are conveniently accessible on the go with smartphones, and subsequently reduce our dependency on outlets such as high street banks, betting shops, and travel agencies. You've probably already witnessed technological unemployment on some level. For camera and film oriented shops like Jessup's, it's not so hard to understand. Barely anyone with a modern phone is going to buy a disposable camera and pay money to have film developed. And there probably aren't too many people with 8 megapixel camera phones who also require digital cameras. Due to advancing technology, these stores have suddenly become specialist stores. Their customers now having to mainly consist of serious photographers. For music, video and game stores, there are 5 main threats here. 1. Supermarkets. Supermarkets are selling a lot of the same products, and most of the time cheaper. 2. Online stores like Amazon. They also offer good deals with the added comfort of 24-hour browsing and, of course, item delivery. 3. Pawn shops like cash converters. They get away with selling entertainment at a second-hand rate, making them even cheaper than the supermarkets. 4. Online, digital downloads and streaming, with apps like iTunes and Netflix, conveniently accessible through smart TVs, gaming consoles, PCs, and most phone and tablet devices. But let's not forget about number 5, good old-fashioned piracy. With the advancements of fibre optic broadband, you can now download entire movies in a matter of minutes. Not that I'm suggesting any of you do that, of course. That would be illegal. I'm just saying it's easier and faster than going to the shops, waiting on the postman, or signing into the Netflix account on the PS3. As an aside, if any part of you is enraged at the thought of all these immoral people illegally sharing media, why not aim some of that authentic aggression at the idea of a society which distributes digital entertainment in physical form? The wastefulness of this would be equivalent to having a unique physical address in order to access each and every website in existence. But perhaps you like the plastic cases, and what's wrong with that? Well, the case itself is made from polypropylene, while the clear film sleeve is made from polyester. By bonding these different plastic materials together, it makes them almost impossible to properly recycle on large scale. So when the plastic rips, breaks, or even just gets old and wasted, they have to either be buried in landfills or incinerated, which of course produces toxic chemicals. And this is the system we support by the way we choose to purchase entertainment, despite having had the possibility of digital alternatives for over a decade. Asking people to shop in these stores is asking us to live in an unnatural, counter-progressive way. So, perhaps the failure of these stores is a good thing. But, good or bad, a digital acquisition is upon us, and the failure of these stores are simply a matter of time. And yes, even if they sell their brand status, they're failing. Nordic Game won't be too far behind either. But what about bookstores, like Waterstones? Well, the increase of tablet and ebook readers certainly poses a threat. However, I can imagine the feel of a book, which people are also nostalgic about, will be used as a justification argument for the continued stifling of a successful digital transition. But even without a digital alternative, Waterstones in particular is facing the same threats from online distribution and supermarkets, as are almost all product-based stores. Products to do with body care, cosmetics, clothing, mobile phones, electrical appliances, and even musical equipment. However, there is an argument to be made that the high street stores are different, perhaps even better than a website or a supermarket, and that they provide knowledgeable staff. Perhaps you're unsure of what product is best for you. In these shops, you can interact with friendly salespeople who are in fact qualified to offer advice and help you make the right decision. Well, while it is true that these employees are trained to help customers, and they are required to have a certain level of knowledge about the product, they also have something which no one really questions: sales targets. Either the staff or the store itself will have target requirements. If I wandered into a phone shop unsure of what to buy and make the mistake of telling the salesperson that I'm not too familiar with the differences, I leave myself open to a product sale bias. In this scenario, the store has no problem selling the best products, so instead, I am presented with an inferior product, which the store is struggling to offload. The salesperson's job here becomes distorted, and I, the customer, will most likely be subjected to an eager sales pitch as opposed to honest insight.
You are going to get what's ever in this box for $24.99. Oh no! No! He's got 3 balls of sex in his business for £26.90. You need to buy.
Boys, please, please.
Oh, Matt, no. You need to buy now.
In our current system, money is the driving force, and as such, the advice and intent to help a consumer make the right decision is only a conditionality when required. But the main priority is always profit.
I know this is designed for kids. I've had some fun with this thing.
This is amazing. What's so great about this is the kids love tablets. They love playing with tablets. They love the games. They love the educational games. But mom and dad want them to be safe. They want them to do, everything on. But, it's...
You okay? Okay. What it does is it gives us an opportunity for us to be able to offer a piece of electronic equipment that is simple for children to operate, but also mom and dad can operate it as well. At $149.94, the secret of it is that it has all the technology that mom and dad's tablet has. It's got the Android operating system 4.0. It's got all...
Now, had we instead used the internet as a guide, either through social media or public forums, we would obtain better and more accurate advice. The usefulness of these salespeople, which we've all grown accustomed to, pale in comparison to the advice found online. The rating systems found on public forums are in fact designed to weed out any bad or incorrect information, and without it, we are all vulnerable to the biases, lies, and manipulation of self-righteous profit seekers. But perhaps there's another element to the physical shopping experience that I'm missing. What about clothing shops? You know, I have to admit that even I thought they wouldn't be as affected by online alternatives, for the simple fact that most people like to try before they buy. I mean, who buys clothes without trying them on first? Well, I mean, I do, but that's because I'm a guy, right? You know, when I buy a t-shirt, I just look for the one with the big L, and they never really let me down. Maybe being male, I don't have to account for boob size when evaluating comfort. But surely women don't prefer buying online without getting to try the clothes on first. Well, when women's clothing shop, International, launched their online store in 2012, they took in more profit in one day from the website than all their retail outlets combined. That surprised me. Clothing doesn't seem to have any intrinsic immunity to the threat of online alternatives. Now, taking a look at retail outside of online threats, perhaps there is also something to be said about specialist shops in times of recession. Shops which specialise in ties, for instance, or underwear, or shoes, jeans, suits, exercise clothing and outdoor clothing. If we had a shop dedicated to just socks, would that work? Maybe in these hard times it's not surprising why all-in-one stores like Primark seem to be staying afloat. You want a shirt? Primark. You want a dress? Primark. Shoes, costume jewellery, candles, cushions, towels, even a mankini. And the comfort of finding everything under one roof also extends to the supermarkets. And looking at supermarkets, what happened when they began to implement self-service tills? In this Tesco's, the 9 items or less section has been completely replaced with self-scanning. So now only one job is required to assist those unfamiliar with the process or those trying to purchase items which require age verification. When this technology extends to the larger conveyor belt sections, as it has been in pockets, or more importantly, when high street stores like Primark adopt self-serving, retail will undergo yet another transitionary phase, resulting in thousands of redundancies, and these job losses will not be temporary. For once this process is in place, there is no reasonable argument to go back to having lines of paid humans who are in fact now more expensive in the long run. And this new self-service revolution doesn't end there. General convenience stores are now entirely replaceable with vending machine kiosks. A company called Shop24 has over 190 locations in Europe, and they have already begun UK implementation. And as the name suggests, these vending stores are open all hours, giving them an even greater advantage over conventional human-required methods. Vending machine stores will also start to crop up in the form of sweet shops and on-the-go cuisine, offering hot drinks, soft drinks, desserts, chips, noodles, hot dogs, even pizza. Complete vending machine integration of cafes and lunch bars are on the horizon, as well as local pubs consisting of alcohol, cigarette and pub food vending. The only human required job here would be a moderator / bouncer hybrid, ensuring no one under the legal drinking age gains access. But even the need for human age verification is threatened by technology. Today we have the eye sample, a vending machine developed by Intel and Crafts. With built-in optical sensors, it is capable of reading the face and determining gender and age, all within a fraction of a second. Earlier I mentioned pawn shops such as cash converters, and it's interesting to note how these shops actually tend to profit in times of economic recession. For the more we struggle to get by, the more likely we are to entertain leasing our goods at interest, despite the risk of losing them if we fail to buy them back within a certain time constraint. However, there are items which we would pawn with no intention of buying back, and I guess for that area of sales, more and more people are now turning to eBay. But how about charity shops? I believe they have longevity, as they provide a unique service. If you have old clothes or trinkets which you no longer need but don't feel they're valuable enough for the likes of eBay, charity shop donations are a morally viable way of discarding items no longer needed, and this product recycling process is far less wasteful than taking your old things to the skip. However, we are focusing on the relevance of a job loss and its effects on the economy. Since most charity shops are run by volunteers and their profits are in some part donated to charity, I fail to see their economic relevance here. Throughout the high street, the only shops which really seem to have immunity are the ones which require actual human performed services, such as tattooing or hairdressing. But just for fun, let's see if tattoo artists really are impervious to automation. In 2012, a guy named Chris Eckert developed the auto-ink tattoo machine. Now, for demonstration purposes, it uses a ballpoint pen instead of a needle. However, the implication of this machine's potential is obvious. If it were ever to take off, pre-programmed designs could eliminate the need for any human involvement in the tattooing process. Earlier, I highlighted the fact that a lot of high street stores now occupy warehouses and sell their products online. This may lead some of you to assume that the economy will at least be helped in some part by all these new warehouse jobs. Well, it seems even these jobs are under attack. For example, Amazon is the world's largest online retailer and currently have 12 fulfillment centres across the UK. But in May of 2012, Amazon purchased the American Kiva Systems for $775 million. What is Kiva? Kiva is an autonomous robot which uses optical sensors to navigate through a warehouse. It reads inventory items as bits of digital information, which is then organised through complex algorithms in much the same way that Google organises web pages. They can pick, pack, and ship anything sold online faster and for a lot less money than a human. These efficiencies allow Kiva to gather goods within minutes of an order, allowing the remaining human workers to ship up to 4 times more packages in an hour. Similarly, the Spanish Boinesa group have incorporated 2 automised facilities. The first stores products directly as they are being unloaded from delivery vehicles, guaranteeing complete control and traceability of goods. And in the second, once products have been calibrated and classified, they are placed on double-depth shelving, which allows for twice the storage capacity without having to increase the amount of stack cranes used. Since Boinesa switched to using the high-speed automised facilities, they have eliminated the need for human operator intervention and have increased their product control and warehouse security to the extent that output is now 5 times the amount of a conventional warehouse. According to the Organisation of Economic Cooperation and Development, the manufacturing sector's share of both employment and GDP has gradually declined since the 60s, although manufacturing output, in terms of both production and value, has steadily increased since 1945. The reason, of course, is technology. And looking at the production of an automobile, it's easy to see why we prefer using machines. If these trends continue, it's not far-fetched to think most, if not all, factory workers will eventually be replaced by machines. Now, there's 3 main reasons as to why factory automation has yet to be fully integrated across the board. 1. Vulnerability. An automated system usually has to be pre-programmed for each specific task, which make them susceptible to committing errors outside of their immediate scope of knowledge. This makes them typically unable to apply simple rules of logic to general propositions. However, machines today have far more mobility and dexterity than ever imagined, and instead of having to be pre-programmed for each motion, machines are gradually gaining autonomy, being able to detect objects and predict movement. The second reason is due to unpredictable, excessive developmental costs. The research and development costs of automating a specific task can often exceed the cost saved by the automation itself. The third reason also has to do with affordability. High initial costs. Automating a new product requires an initial investment, which is usually quite expensive when compared with the unit cost of the product, even though the cost of automating may be spread among many products over time. The decision to automate is therefore reserved for products which have proven to be profitable and unlikely to change, as any alteration could require the reprogramming of machines. Now, these three problems have been an issue since factory automation began, but as time goes on, the machines improve and the cost of automating declines. For simple assembly line tasks, it's certainly been cheaper to have human workers. However, in mid-2012, an American company called Rethink Robotics launched the Baxter robot. Baxter is a revolution in assembly line manufacturing, as it can be programmed to perform a multitude of tasks, and the best part is, you don't even have to be a programmer. Simply grab his arms, guide him through the motions of the required task, and then leave him to get on with it. If another task is required later on, simply grab his arms again and reprogram the motions. Baxter is currently on the market for around £14,000, which is an extremely affordable initial investment cost, and taking into account the average lifespan, it works for less than £3 an hour, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and doesn't require tea breaks. This robot is set to revolutionise the entire manufacturing industry. Aside from factory jobs being replaced by machines, there are many products today which are quickly becoming altogether irrelevant. For those of us with smartphones and tablets, the following examples may appear too obvious to require a detailed analysis. But for those of you who have yet to acknowledge this trend, let's take a look at the implied future of the smartphone app. Currently, apps are in the process of killing a vast range of physical products, most obviously paper products. Novels, comic books, cookbooks, puzzle books, phone books and yellow pages, dictionaries, encyclopedia, magazines, newspapers, shopping catalogues, road maps, photo albums, calendars, diaries, and of course, many products associated with stationery. Then there are electrical products such as calculators, radios, alarm clocks, camcorders, voice recorders, remote controls, karaoke machines, guitar tuners, amplifiers and effects pedals, GPS navigation, video game cartridges, and even board games are having their physical necessity challenged by software. Now what about desktop computers? Most people only really use their PCs for surfing the web, socializing, listening to music and watching videos, all of which can now be done on the same smartphones and tablets. PCs, while not disappearing entirely, will decline in numbers because of this, affecting many jobs associated with producing not only the computers themselves, but think of all those peripheral devices associated with them, the keyboard, mouse, webcam, as well as the hardware components such as RAM chips and graphics cards. Now, this might seem overly pessimistic. However, a survey by the International Data Corporation showed tablets to account for a third of all computing sales in 2012, and even Microsoft are acknowledging the inevitable outcome. And with the advent of 4G wireless networking, which allows for high-speed internet on our mobile devices, we can now use applications like Skype and FaceTime to make phone calls to and from anywhere in the world for free. The implication being the demise of traditional landline phones and mobile network tariffs. British Telecom have been preparing for this and have already launched their cloud network. Now, digital alternatives may not yet be adopted by the majority, perhaps mostly because of nostalgia rather than efficiency. But the children of the future are not going to care about the toys of the past. VHS, CD and DVD players, as well as Freeview, Sky and Virgin Media boxes, are all facing redundancy by the advancements of the smart TV. Why? Because smart TVs stream content from the internet, making it possible for Sky and Virgin Media to exclusively exist in app form. So what of all these lavish book, CD and DVD collections, which most of us equate to our status and identity? These erroneous collections are no longer optimal, as we now have digital media libraries with the likes of iTunes and iBooks. And when digital libraries are rehomed to our TVs, as well as our phone and tablets, just as the VHS collections were phased out by the improved format of the DVD, our current, wasteful, vanity-orientated physical media collections will be phased out and replaced with non-physical digital formats, alongside their required physical media players. And in fact, in January of 2013, tech giant Philips gave in and sold their home entertainment appliances division, and now only produce coffee machines, juicers, toasters, and electric razors. The rise of high-speed fibre optic broadband will also extend the extinction of irrelevant peripherals to Blu-ray players and video game consoles. That's right, even video games will be played via internet streaming. Sound far-fetched? Well, Sony Entertainment doesn't think so. In July of 2012, they spent $380 million purchasing the cloud-based video game streaming network, Gaika. And even Xbox co-founder Nat Brown has expressed concerns over the implication of Apple entering the games industry, acknowledging the potential of their already established infrastructure to easily replace the Xbox, PlayStation, and Nintendo consoles. Now, obviously there are many physical products on the market which are not threatened by digital downloading. However, in October of 2012, the City of London was host to the world's first ever consumer 3D print show, displaying how 3D printing can allow customers to download and print a vast range of products as and when they need them. Now, this is not merely a glimpse into a hypothetical future. 3D printers can already build products from a range of materials, including plastic, chocolate, glass, concrete, and even metal. So, what products could we print? Well, just about any basic household items, from plates, bowls, mugs, bottles, cutlery, Tupperware, lampshades, photo frames, furniture, musical instruments, figurines, even a wrench printed with fully moving parts. So you may be wondering just how far in the future 3D printing is and how expensive these things are going to be. Well, let's look at the RepRap project. RepRap is a self-replicating 3D printer, meaning it can print most of its own parts. So if you have one, you can make another one. And the great thing about RepRap is that it is open source, meaning its design is not owned or constrained by copyright. It's completely free for anyone to use and improve. Today, 3D printers can be purchased from open source groups like RepRap and Fab at Home, or commercially through pp3dp.com and Cubify. But perhaps you don't have the room for a home 3D printer. Well, there is an option of ordering 3D printed products online through services such as Shapeways, Sculpteo, and iMaterialize. Companies can also employ the mass producing of 3D printed products through organizations such as Thingiverse and Craftworks. The world of 3D printing is huge and is here today. And just like every other technological advancement, as time goes on, these things will become more and more affordable. And every company which currently produces all those household items will simply become financially unsustainable. A group called PIF3D aimed to exploit the replicating abilities of RepRap by taking the machine to universities and hosting 24-hour 3D printing parties, where they give people the skills to build one of these things. The objective being that these people can pay it forward. Once they have built 2 or 3 RepRap printers, they repeat the process of taking it to schools and showing others how to make their own, and the process repeats. The idea of paying it forward could easily spread like wildfire, meaning just about everyone in the world could own a 3D printer for next to nothing. Now, as 3D printers become more mainstream, there will most likely be attempts to patent certain design elements and sell each downloadable product commercially. However, once a product is on a CAD file, there is no real reason 3D designs would be immune to internet piracy. Around 2.5% of the UK's population have jobs which require a driving licence. The first autonomous driverless vehicle was developed by Sebastian Thrun, director of the Stanford Artificial Intelligence Laboratory and co-inventor of Google Street View. In 2005, the Google car won the DARPA Grand Challenge, and since then, Google have been developing a commercial system. However, progress has been held back due to legal liabilities. For example, if there was an accident, who would be at fault? The car owner or the manufacturer? Or if the accident was caused by loss of signal, would the internet providers be accountable? Filtering through legislation is often a lengthy process, but they've come a long way. And in August of 2012, after the Google team announced they had completed over 300,000 miles of autonomous driving, all without a single accident, Nevada, Florida, and California all passed laws allowing driverless cars. Although it's hard to envision a complete timeline, the remaining United States and the UK will eventually pass similar legislation, and driverless cars will explode onto the market. As well as the American-based Google car, which most of us are probably aware of, there is also a German creation from Autonomous Labs at the Free University of Berlin, and their project has already been given approval to run a driverless taxi service throughout Berlin and Brandenburg. Now, for those of you who may feel hesitant about assigning the control of your vehicle to a machine, know that the Kiva systems mentioned earlier have essentially the same autonomy, and they too have yet to witness a single accident. Compare that to the UK's current yearly rates of 3,000 motor vehicle incidents resulting in fatalities, 35,000 resulting in serious accidents, and a total 276,000 severities. Clearly, it would be societally irresponsible to maintain dependency on human drivers while the safer option is available. And in making a safer society, all jobs associated with public transport and delivery of goods could be achieved without human involvement. GEA Farm Technologies provides technological solutions to livestock farming, including the development of a fully automated milking system for dairy farms. Dairy cows are guided into these MI1 milking units. The cow's electronic tag is identified and their pre-allocated amount of food is dispensed. A 3D camera scans and identifies the udders, then attaches to the teacups. It washes, dries, and pre-milks the cows. This amazing technology reduces labour, increases milk production, lowers stress of both the cows and the farmers, and electric tagging allows for the ability to manage cows individually. So, when is this technology being implemented? Well, looking at the UK alone, it's actually already been in use since 2011. EGNOS Precision Farming is a system which uses GPS guidance technology for crop cultivation. The AutoTrack technology sends signals to the tractor steering system via a GPS receiver. The resulting navigation is so precise that farmers can actually treat soil and crops in a site-specific manner and ensure optimum chemical doses are applied to the right places. The system has been shown to cut costs on fertilization and fuel, reducing the environmental impact, and because the tractors steer themselves, it also reduces operator fatigue. As you've probably guessed, it's only a matter of time before these tractors are also equipped with autonomous driving technology, spelling the end of this particular human-required task and allowing for the full automation of crop cultivation. But why limit crop cultivation to fields? In 1999, a professor of environmental health sciences at Columbia University in New York, Dixon Despomier, challenged his students to feed the entire population of Manhattan using 13 acres of usable rooftop gardens. The class calculated that only 2% of all the people could be fed using this method. Unsatisfied with the results, Despomier made an off-the-cuff suggestion of growing plants indoors and vertically. The idea sparked interest, and by 2001, the first outline of a vertical farm was introduced. Today, scientists, architects and investors worldwide are working together to make the concepts of vertical farming a reality. Unlike traditional agriculture, a controlled indoor environment is not susceptible to crop loss from severe weather conditions, nor is it limited by seasonal crop production. And using the method of hydroponics, which doesn't require soil, water is preserved in a closed-loop system, eliminating the concern of agricultural runoff, and since it's continually recycled, the total water usage is 70% less than our current requirements. Without soil, this system is also immune to most pesticides, meaning we could do away with having to spray agrochemicals on our food. And for any of you skeptical about the limitations of hydroponic farming, here's a list of already commercially available products from hydroponically produced plants.
Up next, it sounds like science fiction, but Dr. Nancy Snyderman reports on how your smartphone may change medicine, including warning you of a heart attack.
By modifying an iPhone with this ECG attachment and using the Alive ECG app, your heart rate, temperature, oxygen and fluid levels can all be recorded with the results directly uploadable to your cardiologist. Blood, saliva, urine, and even sweat can all be tested with this device. Combined with a wireless ultrasound, full physical checkups can be carried out remotely from anywhere in the world.
There's 20 million, over 20 million echocardiograms done a year. So 20 million times $800, that's a lot of money. Probably 70, 80% we can get rid of just by having this part of the physical exam.
As for prescription medicine, perhaps the biggest threat is not with technology, but rather in the curing of illnesses. 15-year veteran of the pharmaceutical industry, Gwen Olson, stated, "The pharmaceutical industry is in the business of disease maintenance and symptoms management. They are not in the business of curing cancer, Alzheimer's, or heart disease, because if they were, they would be in the business of putting themselves out of business." Now, for those of you who doubt the medical establishment would knowingly put profitability ahead of actually helping people, you need to look for no further evidence than a 2002 UK clinical trial, which found most antidepressants to be as effective as sugar pills, giving the effect of a working drug through nothing more than a placebo. And It's not hard to see why the medical industry would choose to promote the constant reselling of pharmaceuticals. If, for example, a cure for cancer were discovered and adopted by the mainstream, it would cause considerable losses in profits generated through radiotherapy, chemotherapy, hormone therapy, gene therapy, and immunotherapy, not to mention the surgical costs of removing tumours. So, what does it mean for their industry when a 15-year-old boy from Maryland discovers a new way of detecting cancer, which studies have shown to be potentially 99% accurate, 168 times faster, and 26,000 times cheaper than our current methods? Make no mistake, this amazing achievement will be seen by the cancer profiteers as a blow to the industry. But regardless of their somewhat corrupt, profit-driven mentality, technology moves on. And even when pharmaceuticals are the only option, technology is yet again providing solutions.
Organic chemists make molecules, very complicated molecules, by chopping up a big molecule into small molecules and get reverse engineering. And as a chemist, one of the things I wanted to ask my research group a couple of years ago is, could we make a really cool universal chemistry set? In essence, could we app chemistry? Well, to start to do this, we took a 3D printer and we started to print our beakers and our test tubes on one side and then print the molecule at the same time on the other side and combine them together in what we call reactionware. And so by printing the vessel and doing the chemistry at the same time, we may start to access this universal toolkit of chemistry. Now, what could this mean? Well, if we can embed biological and chemical networks like a search engine, so if you have a cell that's ill that you need to cure, or bacteria that you want to kill, if you have this embedded in your device at the same time and you do the chemistry, you may be able to make drugs in a new way. So how are we doing this in the lab? Well, it requires software, it requires hardware, and it requires chemical inks. And so the really cool bit is the idea is that we want to have a universal set of inks that we put out with the printer, and you download the blueprint, the organic chemistry for that molecule, and you make it in the device. And so you can make your molecule in the printer using this software. So what could this mean? You don't need to go to the chemist anymore. We can print drugs at point of need. We can download new diagnostics. Say a new superbug has emerged. You put it in your search engine and you create the drug to treat the threat. So this allows you on-the-fly molecular assembly. But perhaps for me, the cool bit going into the future is this idea of taking your own stem cells with your genes and your environment, and you print your own personal medicine. And if that doesn't seem fanciful enough, where do you think we're going to go? Well, you're going to have your own personal matter fabricator.
As well as using bioprinting for binding molecules into medicine, bioprinting is also being used to construct organs. Today, we can print an entire lung. Now, looking at hospital care, I'm sure most of you are now aware of these telepresent robots, which allow intensive care specialists to remotely communicate with patients across multiple hospitals. And as the robots have the ability to transmit information regarding the heart and breathing, examinations can occur much faster while actually reducing the workload of hospital staff, since it eliminates the need for patients to be transferred to intensive care units in some cases. The hospital's workload is also being reduced by Aethion's TUG system, in which an autonomous robot courier can make their rounds carrying prescriptions, medical waste, food trays, and up to 200 pounds of laundry. As for home care, meet Asimo. Asimo is a humanoid robot created by Honda, with the aspiration of helping people who lack full mobility. Since he was first introduced in 2000, he has gradually improved in mobility and communication. Eventually, Asimo will be capable of performing most tasks typically required of home care staff. Now, there are many people who irrationally fear technology, with their frame of reference limited to what they see in movies. But in reality, technology is the provider of many solutions across the full spectrum of health and illnesses.
When she was born, her legs were up by her ears and her shoulders were internally rotated, and she had ulnar deviation on her hands and rocker bottom feet. The geneticist came upstairs and told us she had arthrogryposis multiplex congenita. They brought her legs down and they casted her, and slowly and surely she started to develop. Our first year with Emma, we found out that there was going to be a conference, and it was in Philadelphia.
It was an arthrogryposis family meeting in Philadelphia where I described the Rex.
We watched a presentation on the Rex.
And that's how it all started.
We ended up in Tarek and Whitney's workshop.
The Rex was attached to a stand, and she was able to put her arms into the Rex and for the first time be able to lift her hand up towards her mouth.
She just started, throwing her hands around and playing.
We were bringing candy up for her to eat, and we were bringing toys up there, and it was so fun for us to go up there and to see her play.
The existing Rex is all metal parts, and it's kind of big, and Emma was too small for that. So we required something light and small that would attach to her body and go with her. So that's where we had this Stratasys 3D printing machine, and we thought, well, we could print it out for her.
And he did it, and the weight difference is significant. And for a child who only weighs 25 pounds, it makes a big difference. Whitney and Tarek put their minds together and came up with a jacket, and they would put the Rex on that. And we're on our second jacket. She outgrew the first one, and now we're on our second one. And it's still evolving. It's still growing into this incredible prosthetic that helps her to use her arms.
Without the 3D printer, we would not be in a position we're in with these younger kids, making them a Rex device that can go with them.
This is one of those industries that matches perfectly with 3D printing, additive manufacturing, because we need custom everything.
I think 3D scanning and printing technology is the future for this field.
The ABS plastic that they use is the same plastic used in Legos. It's human-friendly, if you will. It's really strong and durable to handle the abuse. We can answer a need in a heartbeat.
If the Rex breaks, all I have to do is take a picture and email it to Whitney. He knows exactly what the piece is. He prints it out. I go to the hospital, or he's even mailed them.
I don't have to worry about lead time to machine something, order supplies. I can just basically go back to my program and print out another one.
And it's back together and it's working. When she started to express herself, we would go upstairs and we would say, Emma, we're going to put the Rex on. And she called them her magic arms. And everyone in the room cried.
We took it off of her on this one occasion to make some adjustments to it. And as we took it off, she cried out, I want that. And we didn't think all that much of it. But when Mom started to cry, and we look over and ask Mom why she's crying, and she kind of takes a moment to recompose herself and tell us that that was her first complete sentence. To be a part of that, a little special moment for somebody else, can't help but kind of tug at your heartstrings.
fast food industry, for one, is heavily under threat by the same self-serving processes mentioned earlier. In May of 2011, McDonald's announced its plans to install touchscreen technology across 7,000 restaurants in Europe. Parts of the UK have already begun implementation. And in some states in America, voice recognition has replaced the drive-thru.
Can I get a 20-piece?
A 20-piece chicken nugget. What kind of sauces would you like?
What is it?
Real person. What kind of sauce do we have? We got that honey mustard barbecue, sweet and sour. We got honey sauce, hot sauce that burns for hours. We got that buffalo ranch if you need more at Chipotle barbecue. Ask us for more and I'll tell you.
As for the kitchen staff, automated systems are already being used for such processes as draining and refilling deep fat fryers, making more human tasks redundant. But perhaps the largest implied threat has to do with the American robotics company Momentum Machines, which is predicted to revolutionize the fast food industry. They are currently preparing to open the world's first smart restaurant, with its automated burger machine capable of dispensing around 360 burgers an hour. Not only does their machine construct and cook patties, it also slices toppings to order, and the technology even allows for customization, composed of meat ground to order and assembled in whatever combination the customer desires. Restaurant jobs are also threatened by automation. Whether it's assisting chefs, or replacing them completely. What about the job of the restaurant waiter? Well, aside from using robots, Germany is pioneering a different approach. You make your order from a touchscreen, and the food is dispensed via a railing system and delivered to your table when ready. Hotel services are a little harder to automate. But obviously there are elements of automation which do reduce the workload.
Straight away you have automatic check-in and a restaurant that turns into a dance floor.
We're at Youre, New York, which opened in June 2011. Youre is a fun and futuristic brand. Some of the things we have in the hotel are we have motorized beds in the rooms, and we have Youre, which is our answer to futuristic luggage management. At the moment, what we do is we take people's luggage and they store it in the bins provided, and the Youre takes it and stores it up on the wall. What we've done now is we've agreed with the airports, for example, like the JetBlue terminal, you'll be able to choose which airport you want to go to, say JFK or Newark. The bin will come down, you'll put your luggage in there, and then Youre will shift your luggage through tunnels in New York, and you'll be able to pick it up at each of the airport terminals. Also, we're looking at a luggage tracker which you'll be able to download on our mobile app, so you'll be able to follow your luggage from its journey from here at the hotel all the way to the airport. We're also even looking at being able to ship people and the luggage from Youre, New York to one of our airport hotels in the future.
Even cleaning and maintenance is potentially threatened by a series of robots, such as the Roomba autonomous hoover and the Winbot autonomous window cleaner. But perhaps there's some non-automated threats to the traditional process of accommodation. Couchsurfing.com is a sort of social network community where people register their hospitality. The idea being, if you want to travel, you simply type where you want to go, specify how many of you are going, and then search from a list of willing participants. Within this type of community, you can potentially travel the world without any need for paid accommodation. The Sandvik Group are currently the leading global suppliers of service and technical solutions for the mining industry. Sandvik Automine has focused its efforts on developing a comprehensive solution for improving the safety, efficiency, and productivity of underground mining operations. Using autonomous trucks for loading and hauling, they have created a flexible system which can be adapted to the unique working environments of individual operations, even processing ore to high-grade copper concentrate on site. Through automation, they have eliminated many human-required jobs, while increasing production and improving drilling accuracy, which has also been shown to lower the risk of damage incurred by machines. Currently, Sandvik Automine are optimistic about achieving 100% automation of mining. Similarly, since 2009, the Australian mining company Rio Tinto has been using a fleet of Komatsu trucks. The trucks are over 20 feet tall, weigh over 10 tons, and are capable of carrying over 300 tons of material. The trucks are fitted with Komatsu's autonomous haulage system, which allows for navigation from loading units to dumping locations including waste dumps, stockpiles and crushers. However, let's take a step back. Looking at the end production of a mining operation, the reason we associate gold and silver with such high value is because of the difficulty in obtaining and processing these materials, coupled with the time it takes for the earth to naturally produce a diamond, for example. The ability to produce a diamond in a lab has been around for a long time. However, gem quality results have only been achievable in the last few years. Specifically, the American company Gemesis have made huge advancements in the production of synthetic diamonds, with an output of up to 40 rare gems each day. As for the cost, a 1 carat yellow diamond from nature equates to about £13,500, whereas a synthetic replica costs just £4,000. So when we begin to speculate about the future of synthetic materials, perhaps it's not too far-fetched to think we could create copper, coltan, gold and silver and bring these materials to market for a much lower cost than they are today, which would invariably reduce the cost of all technological applications which depend on these materials. Construction employs over 2 million people in the UK and accounts for just under 7% of the nation's GDP. Firstly, let's look at construction as it is today. Because of all the different trades involved, construction is prone to management inefficiency and corruption. The actual process itself is slow, labour-intensive and inefficient, as well as being costly and usually over budget. It is also highly wasteful of resources and is responsible for producing vast amounts of carbon emission. As far as safety is concerned, construction is more dangerous than both mining and agriculture. Each year, an average of 60 workers are fatally injured, with 74,000 non-fatal injuries. Now let's look at the alternative. Contour crafting is a process developed by the University of Southern California's Information Sciences Institute. Though originally conceived as a method to construct molds for industrial parts, the technology of rapid home construction was proposed as a way to rebuild cities after natural disasters occurred. Currently, it uses a computer-controlled crane to distribute concrete layer by layer, incorporating plumbing and electrical network installation. With contour crafting, buildings are rapidly and efficiently constructed with zero manual labour, zero waste, and little emission. It is estimated an average family home could be built in less than 20 hours. However, the homes of the future will not be constrained by today's architectural limitations, for these machines can extrude intricate and complex designs. Perhaps the design of your home will only be limited by your imagination. Now, contour crafting is still relatively new. However, it's easy to see how in the near future this project could be commercialized as a means of streamlining the entire construction industry, destroying a number of jobs not only associated with construction, but also those of plumbers, electricians, and perhaps even architects. The mainstream method of education currently requires an all-knowing authority figure fulfilling the role of teacher and relaying empirical information to the students, after which said teacher will then review and grade the work of the students. This traditional approach to learning has been widely criticised throughout recent years as it relies on rote memorisation, teaching students what to think as opposed to how to think. And using the grading system has also been shown to create structural classism. Sagutha Mitra is a professor of educational technology at the University of Newcastle. His first experiments in child learning began in 1999 with the Hole in the Wall project. Initially, a computer was placed in a kiosk built within a wall in a slum in New Delhi, and children were allowed to use this computer freely. The experiment aimed to show that kids could be taught by computers very easily without any formal training and independent of adult supervision. Mitra termed this approach minimally invasive education. The experiment grew and was repeated in many places. Currently, there are more than 23 hole-in-the-wall kiosks in rural India, and in 2004 it was extended to Cambodia. The results have now demonstrated that groups of children, irrespective of who they are or where they are, can learn to use computers and the internet on their own, using public computers in open spaces such as streets and playgrounds, even without initially knowing any English.
I wanted to test the limits of this system. The first experiment I did out of Newcastle was actually done in India, and I set myself an impossible target. Can Tamil-speaking 12-year-old children in a South Indian village teach themselves biotechnology in English on their own? And I thought, I'll test them, they'll get a 0, I'll give them material, I'll come back and test them, they'll get another 0, I'll go back and say, yes, we need teachers for certain things. I called in 26 children, they all came in there, I told them, look, there's some really difficult stuff on this computer, I wouldn't be surprised if you didn't understand anything. It's all in English, and I'm going. I came back after 2 months, and the 26 children marched in looking very, very quiet. I said, well, did you look at any of the stuff? They said, yes, we did. Did you understand anything? No, nothing. So I said, well, how long did you practice on it before you decided that you understood nothing? They said, we look at it every day. So I said, for 2 months you were looking at stuff you didn't understand. So a 12-year-old girl raises her hand and says, apart from the fact that improper replication of the DNA molecule causes genetic disease, we've understood nothing else. So their scores had gone up from 0 to 30%, which is an educational impossibility under the circumstances. But 30% is not a pass. So I found that they had a friend, a local accountant, a young girl, and they played football with her. I asked that girl, would you teach them enough biotechnology to pass? And she said, how would I do that? I don't know the subject. I said, no, use the method of the grandmother. She said, what's that? I said, well, what you've got to do is stand behind them and admire them all the time. Just say to them, that's cool, that's fantastic, what is that? Can you do that again? Can you show me some more? She did that for 2 months. The scores went up to 50, which is what the posh schools of New Delhi with a trained biotechnology teacher were getting. So I came back to Newcastle with these results and decided that there was something happening here that definitely was getting very serious. Across the River Tyne, 5,000 miles from Delhi, is the little town of Gateshead. In Gateshead, I took 32 children and I started to fine-tune a method. I made them into groups of 4. I said, you make your own groups of 4. Each group of 4 can use 1 computer and not 4 computers. You can exchange groups, you can walk across to another group if you don't like your group, etc. You can go to another group, peer over their shoulders, see what they're doing, come back to your own group and claim it as your own work. The children enthusiastically got after me to say, now what do you want us to do? I gave them 6 GCSE questions. The first group, the best one, solved everything in 20 minutes. The worst, in 45. They used everything that they knew. News groups, Google, Wikipedia, Ask Jeeves, etc. The teachers said, is this deep learning? I said, well, let's try it. I'll come back after 2 months. We'll give them a paper test, no computers, no talking to each other, etc. The average score when I'd done it with the computers and the groups was 76%. When I did the experiment, when I did the test after 2 months, the score was 76%. There was photographic recall inside the children. I suspect because they're discussing with each other. A single child in front of a single computer will not do that. I have further results which are almost unbelievable of scores which go up with time. Because their teachers say that after the session is over, the children continue to Google further. Here in Britain, I put out a call for British grandmothers after my Kuppam experiment. The deal was that they would give me 1 hour of broadband time sitting at their homes 1 day in a week. So they did that, and over the last 2 years, over 600 hours of instruction has happened over Skype using what my students call the granny cloud.
Power of the Supreme.
Back in Gateshead, a 10-year-old girl gets into the heart of Hinduism in 15 minutes. You know, stuff which I don't know anything about. 2 children watch a TED Talk. They wanted to be footballers before. After watching 8 TED Talks, he wants to become Leonardo da Vinci. It's pretty simple stuff. This is what I'm building now. They're called souls, self-organized learning environments. The furniture is designed so that children can sit in front of big, powerful screens, big broadband connections, but in groups. If they want, they can call the granny cloud. This is a soul in Newcastle. The mediator is from Pune, India. So how far can we go? I think we've just stumbled across a self-organizing system. A self-organizing system is one where a structure appears without explicit intervention from the outside. Self-organizing systems also always show emergence, which is that the system starts to do things which it was never designed for, which is why you react the way you do, because it looks impossible. I think I can make a guess now. Education is a self-organizing system where learning is an emergent phenomenon. It will take a few years to prove it experimentally, but I'm going to try. But in the meanwhile, there is a method available. 1 billion children, we need 100 million mediators, there are many more than that on the planet, 10 million souls, $180 billion and 10 years. We could change everything.
So, children left to their own devices are capable of self-learning, perhaps limited only by their ability to search for information. But what if this process was made easier? What if there was a website which consolidated a vast range of subjects, with short educational explanatory videos detailing almost every aspect of mathematics, history, healthcare, medicine, finance, physics, chemistry, biology, astronomy, economics, cosmology, civics, and computer science? Well, that website exists. It's called Khan Academy. Developed by Salman Khan in 2006, the site currently has more than 4,000 micro-lectures and has delivered over 240 million lessons worldwide. In fact, the Khan Academy has been so successful, it is likely the primary inspiration behind Academic Earth, which has evolved the concept to include actual lectures from more than 40 top US colleges, including Harvard, MIT, Princeton, Stanford, and Yale. Since Academic Earth, a group of educators from Stanford University have formed Coursera, adopting the same principles as Khan and Academic Earth. However, with Coursera, upon the completion of online courses, students are awarded certificates, which can and indeed have been used to gain employment, and in some cases as a substitute for credit in real-world educational institutions. And looking at the future of the arts in relation to jobs, I feel an important distinction must be drawn here. There are really two concepts of employment which tends to go unacknowledged. The first is driven by financial necessity. This version makes employment something we submit to in order to gain access to our life-supporting needs. The other is driven by passion, making employment a creative outlet where financial stability is a byproduct and not the primary motivation. In fact, when it comes to art, or any process involving creativity, monetary rewards are actually inverse to productivity.
Our motivations are unbelievably interesting. I mean, the science is really surprising. The science is a little bit freaky, okay? We are not as endlessly manipulable and as predictable as you would think. There's a whole set of unbelievably interesting studies. I want to give you two that call into question this idea that if you reward something, you get more of the behavior you want. If you punish something, you get less of it. So let's go from London to the mean streets of Cambridge, Massachusetts, in the northeastern part of the United States. And let's talk about a study done at MIT, Massachusetts Institute of Technology. Here's what they did. They took a whole group of students and they gave them a set of challenges. Things like memorizing strings of digits, solving word puzzles, other kinds of spatial puzzles, even physical tasks like throwing a ball through a hoop. Okay, they gave them these challenges and they said to incentivize their performance, they gave them 3 levels of rewards. Okay, so if you did pretty well, you got a small monetary reward. If you did medium well, you got a medium monetary reward. And if you did really well, if you were one of the top performers, you got a large cash prize. Okay. We've seen this movie before. This is essentially a typical motivation scheme within organizations, right? We reward the very top performers, we ignore the low performers, and the other folks kind of in the middle. Okay, you get a little bit. So what happens? They do the test, they have these incentives. Here's what they found out. 1, as long as the task involved only mechanical skill, bonuses worked as they would be expected. The higher the pay, the better their performance. Okay, that makes sense. But here's what happens. But once the task called for even rudimentary cognitive skill, a larger reward led to poorer performance. Now this is strange, right? A larger reward led to poorer performance? How can that possibly be? Now what's interesting about this is that these folks here who did this are all economists, 2 at MIT, 1 at the University of Chicago, 1 at Carnegie Mellon, okay, the top tier of the economics profession. And they're reaching this conclusion that seems contrary to what a lot of us learned in economics, which is that the higher the reward, the better their performance. And they're saying that once you get above rudimentary cognitive skill, it's the other way around. Which seems like this kind of, the idea that these rewards don't work that way seems vaguely left-wing and socialist, doesn't it? It's kind of this kind of weird socialist conspiracy. For those of you who have those conspiracy theories, I want to point out the notoriously left-wing socialist group that financed the research, the Federal Reserve Bank. So this is the mainstream of the mainstream coming to a conclusion that's quite surprising, seems to defy the laws of behavioral physics. So this is strange. It's strange finding. So what do? They say, this is freaky. Let's go test it somewhere else. Maybe that $50 or $60 prize isn't sufficiently motivating for an MIT student, right? So let's go to a place where $50 is actually more significant relatively. Right? So let's take the experiment. We're going to go to Madurai, India, rural India, where $50, $60, whatever the number was, is actually a significant sum of money. So they replicated the experiment in India roughly as follows. Small rewards, the equivalent of 2 weeks' salary. Small performance, low performance, 2 weeks' salary. Medium performance, about a month's salary. High performance, about 2 months' salary. Okay, so those are real good incentives. Okay, so you're going to get a different result here. Well, what happened, though, was that the people offered the medium reward did no better than the people offered the small reward. But this time around, the people offered the top reward. They did worst of all. Higher incentives led to worse performance. What's interesting about this is that it actually isn't all that anomalous. This has been replicated over and over and over again by psychologists, by some extent by sociologists, and by economists, over and over and over again. For simple, straightforward tasks, those kinds of incentives, if you do this, then you get that, they're great. For tasks that are algorithmic, set of rules where you have to just follow along and get a right answer, if-then rewards, carrots and sticks, outstanding. But when the task gets more complicated, when it requires some conceptual, creative thinking, those kinds of motivators demonstrably don't work. In fact, money is a motivator at work, but in a slightly strange way. If you don't pay people enough, they won't be motivated. What's curious about, there's another paradox here, which is that the best use of money as a motivator is to pay people enough to take the issue of money off the table. Pay people enough so that they're not thinking about money and they're thinking about the work. Now, once you do that, it turns out there are 3 factors that the science shows lead to better performance. Not to mention personal satisfaction. Autonomy, mastery, and purpose. Autonomy is our desire to be self-directed, to direct our own lives. Now, in many ways, traditional notions of management run afoul of that. Management is great if you want compliance, but if you want engagement, which is what we want in the workforce today as people are doing more complicated, sophisticated things, self-direction is better. Let me give you some examples of this, of almost radical forms of self-direction in the workplace that lead to good results. Let's start with this company right here, Atlassian, an Australian company. It's a software company, and they do something really cool. Once a quarter on a Thursday afternoon, they say to their developers, for the next 24 hours, you can work on anything you want. You can work on it the way you want. You can work on it with whomever you want. All we ask is that you show the results to the company at the end of those 24 hours in this fun kind of meeting, not a star chamber session, but this fun meeting with beer and cake and fun and other things like that. It turns out that that one day of pure, undiluted autonomy has led to a whole array of fixes for existing software, a whole array of ideas for new products that otherwise had never emerged. One day. Now, this is not an if-then incentive. This is not the sort of thing that I would have done 3 years ago before I knew this research. I would have said, you want people to be creative and innovative? Give them a freaking innovation bonus. If you can do something cool, I'll give you $2,500. They're not doing this at all. They're essentially saying, you probably want to do something interesting. Let me just get out of your way. One day of autonomy produces things that had never emerged. Now, let's talk about mastery. Mastery is our urge to get better at stuff. We like to get better at stuff. This is why people play musical instruments on the weekend. You got all these people who are acting in ways that seem irrational economically. They play musical instruments on weekends. Why? It's not going to get them a mate. It's not going to make them any money. Why are they doing it? Because it's fun. Because you get better at it, and that's satisfying. Go back in time a little bit. I imagine this if I went to my first economics professor, a woman named Mary Alice Shulman. And I went to her in 1983 and said, Professor Shulman, can I talk to you after class for a moment? Yeah. I got this inkling. I got this idea for a business model. I just want to run it past you. Here's how it would work. You get a bunch of people around the world who are doing highly skilled work, but they're willing to do it for free and volunteer their time, 20, sometimes 30 hours a week. Okay, she's looking at you somewhat skeptically there. Oh, but I'm not done. And then what they create, they give it away rather than sell it. It's going to be huge. I mean, she truly would have thought I was insane. Okay, it seems to fly in the face of so many things. But what do you have? You have Linux powering 1 out of 4 corporate servers in Fortune 500 companies, Apache powering more than the majority of web servers, Wikipedia. What's going on? Why are people doing this? Why are these people, many of whom are technically sophisticated, highly skilled people who have jobs? Okay? They have jobs. They're working at jobs for pay, doing sophisticated technological work. And yet, during their limited discretionary time, they do equally, if not more, technically sophisticated work, not for their employer, but for someone else for free. That's a strange economic behavior. Economists who look into it, why are they doing this? It's overwhelmingly clear. Challenge and mastery, along with making a contribution. That's it. What you see more and more is a rise of what you might call the purpose motive, is that more and more organizations want to have some kind of transcendent purpose, partly because it makes coming to work better, partly because that's the way to get better talent. And what we're seeing now is, in some ways, when the profit motive becomes unmoored from the purpose motive, bad things happen. Bad things ethically sometimes, but also bad things just like not good stuff, like crappy products, like lame services, like uninspiring places to work. That when the profit motive is paramount, or when it becomes completely unhitched from the purpose motive, it's just, people don't do great things. More and more organizations are realizing this and sort of disturbing the categories between what's profit and what's purpose. And I think that actually heralds something interesting. And I think that organizations that are flourishing, whether they're profit, for profit, or somewhere in between, are animated by this purpose motive. Let me give you a couple of examples. Here's the founder of Skype. He says, our goal is to be disruptive, but in the cause of making the world a better place. Pretty good purpose. Here's Steve Jobs. I want to put a ding in the universe. All right? That's the kind of thing that might get you up in the morning and racing to go to work. So I think that that we are purpose maximizers, not only profit maximizers. I think the science shows that we care about mastery very, very deeply. And the science shows that we want to be self-directed. And I think that the big takeaway here is that if we start treating people like people and not assuming that they're simply horses, slower, smaller, better-smelling horses, if we get past this kind of ideology of carrots and sticks and look at the science, I think we can actually build organizations and work lives that make us better off, but I also think they have the promise to make our world just a little bit better.
So, while all the mundane, repetitive jobs are being assigned to machines, the jobs which exist outside of a computer's creative capabilities are in fact the jobs which would exist regardless of financial reward, and in fact produce better results without the incentive. Earlier we looked at the possibility of certain media companies becoming exclusive to app form, but what would the future of media look like if a website such as YouTube decided to adopt the same feature of paid subscription viewing, incorporating, say, an embedded planner interface? Well, for one, YouTube would have an immediate advantage as their planner could be customizable, and rather than having to pay for an entire package of channels, users would have the option of paying for individual programming. The programs themselves would no longer be constrained by the time slot limitations of a typical TV network, for each program could have its own channel. But this is all merely speculation, right? Well, no. Turns out YouTube are currently preparing to switch on live stream subscription viewing. The most profitable sector in the entertainment business is the film industry. One of the reasons is, of course, due to just how expensive it actually is to make a film, accounting for the sheer amount of people involved in production. But many production elements are quickly becoming redundant by the ever-improving capabilities of CGI. If filming outside, you only have a few hours of light each day to maintain continuity. With CGI, backdrops and lighting can be controlled in a greenlit studio. As far as on-screen performances, movies tend to have dozens of actors each requiring multiple takes of a scene, and character CGI has typically been reserved for cartoonish features. Well, as the technology advances, CGI is getting ever closer to reflecting reality.
Okay, first thing, smile, frown, look mean, eyebrows up, eyebrows down, move your mouth around like this. Now go A, E, E, I, O, U. Very good. Okay, now.
With CGI, an actor could perform every scene of a movie inside a greenlit studio. And since his image is rendered, you could have a single actor performing multiple roles. Perhaps every role in an entire movie could be performed by just 4 or 5 actors. And since their emotions would be captured and stored on the computers, in the future, rather than having to shoot a scene over and over until finally getting the desired emotional response, perhaps directors will have the option of choosing from a database of pre-programmed actions. All of this implying mass reduction in the volume of people needed to make a film. Now, I'm sure many of you will see the lump of labour fallacy here and point out that new jobs would emerge in the form of building the CGI. However, video games are entirely CGI, and the development of a game currently costs between $500,000 and $5 million. Compare that with the starting price of $200 million for a Hollywood movie. And then there's the open source community. Blender, for one, is an open source 3D modeling program. Since the Blender project began, a community of volunteers have downloaded the source code and over time made gradual improvements to the program's functionality. Today, Blender is capable of producing this.
Why don't you just admit that you're freaked out by my robot hand?
This is pretty freaky.
This sector covers a vast range of jobs, and I feel it would be far too time-consuming to address each in great detail. So let's run through these quickly. The workload typically required with legal advice and representation is now being diminished through the use of e-discovery, which enables one lawyer to do the work of 500. Accounting services are being replaced with software such as Cashflow, which can actually track bank transactions, obviating the need for manual input accounting. Translation and interpretation services are also being replaced with software, such as Lingo, which uses Apple's Siri technology to translate between 35 languages in real time.
What is hello in Spanish?
Okay, here you go.
Architectural work may over time become less of a specialist subject. As computers grew throughout the 90s, necessity demanded the majority of us familiarise ourselves with operating systems. I believe the advancements in 3D printing will demand more people become familiar with computer-aided design. And as the software improves, perhaps much of the architectural process could be constructed in a program similar to a Sims game. Engineering, computer system design, photography, and scientific research all seem to fall under the umbrella of creativity, which, as demonstrated earlier, would exist regardless of paid employment. Advertising services may also be under threat if YouTube were to eliminate their competition and also incorporate a paid viewing feature which disables advertising. Consulting services, I think, can easily be replaced with advanced voice recognition software. The core requirement of an administrator is to process, filter, organize, and categorize data. Facebook has recently shown the potential of account synchronization. Instead of having to fill out a form every time we register to a new website, now we have this single-click option of register through Facebook, where all the user has to do is click this button and the website does the rest. Of course, Facebook is a social network and likely contains information not necessarily relevant to third-party organizations. But if the government were to further the train of thought here, we could instate a nationalized social hub whereby those of us with, say, a national insurance number could at least have the option of having our relevant details authenticated and synced with our national insurance accounts. And once the information has been submitted and synced, applying for government benefit, bank loans, college placements, or even making a dentist appointment could all be achieved much faster through the online hub, reducing our dependency on the processing requirements of these time-consuming middlemen. And having a regulated information hub could also extend to the elimination, or at the very least the downgrading, of a postal service, for all forms of documentation could be securely transferred electronically to authenticated email addresses. The world of finances and insurance is obviously dependent upon the circulation of money. So rather than address specific elements of this sector, it's perhaps easier to simply look at the root cause of our pending financial collapse. Far from automated systems, the fall of the global financial economy will result from simple causation principles in mathematics. Almost every form of trade in the world is represented through currency. Currency is a proclamation where a certain value is identified by a number. £1 will represent a value, which can differ slightly between traders, but generally holds an accepted range. And this ranging value is not determined or decided by politicians or bankers. It is a value derived from the market. When calculating the cost of housing, energy, transportation, as well as goods and services, we are presented with a consumer price index, and thus derive the overall market value of the pound. The markets themselves are predicated on consumer spending. So, if all consumers continually spent the same amount, the market prices would stabilise, and the economy could potentially function harmoniously, neither growing nor contracting. But let's take a step back and look at where money actually comes from in the first place. All money in circulation was created by, and is the property of, the central bank, in our case the Bank of England. This bank loans money to commercial and investment banks, which then issue loans themselves to rival banks, consumers, and businesses. So, since we are all trading borrowed money, cyclical consumption is not only a necessity for ensuring the integrity of the pound, it is also a requirement for the banks, thus the currency, to remain operational. Only one problem with this. This borrowing from the bank's process, it's not quite the same as a game of Monopoly where a friend might loan you some cash until you pass go. All the money borrowed from both the central and commercial banks have to be paid back with interest. But since the interest is in fact not created alongside the initial loan, the ability to pay back more than exists in principle is mathematically impossible if the goal was maintaining economic harmony. So instead we try to resolve the problem generated with interest through a process called quantitative easing, in which banks may temporarily lower interest rates and the government will often borrow more money at interest in an effort to grow the economy. See, rather than address the fundamental flaw of this system, we instead perpetuate an infinite growth paradigm, which of course is ultimately unsustainable on a finite planet. And in looking at the numbers, it doesn't seem this quantitative easing has had much effect. Here's the average monthly consumer costs in 2008. Compared with today, we have an overall price increase of 25%, while wages during the same time only rose by 6%. These results are simply because perpetual growth is unsustainable, and bankruptcy, redundancy, foreclosures, administrations, liquidations, loan defaults, and the raising of a country's debt ceiling are all built-in consequences, and we should expect nothing else of this system. Having looked at each sector of employment, it appears we are heading towards a fully automated economy. Some might say this would still require a lot of human workers. Machines, after all, do have at least one constraint. While they can work without a monetary incentive, they do require energy. Our current methods of energy cultivation result in the depletion of natural oil and the burning of CO2 emitting fossil fuels. But these methods are wasteful, cumbersome, and quite frankly outdated. Solutions to the energy crisis are often cited in the form of nuclear power, but after the disasters in Japan, perhaps we should be looking to cleaner, safer solutions. Solar energy is gradually becoming more and more accepted by the mainstream. Even the government are incentivizing homeowners to adopt solar panels with the feed-in tariff scheme, where participants will be compensated for any surplus energy generated. While an initial solar panel investment may deter some of us, it's reassuring to know that the cost of solar is currently dropping at a rate of 30% per year. But can we really sustain our energy needs on solar panels alone? Well, firstly, solar technology is not limited to buildings. An American company called Solar Roadways has developed photovoltaic solar roads. With current technology, it is estimated that the full integration of solar roads across the US would generate enough power to satisfy the current energy usage of the entire planet. The roads also incorporate LED display, which could probably be programmed to coincide with autonomous vehicles, ensuring even greater road safety. The roads in colder climates would be installed with embedded heating elements, eliminating ice and snow hazards, as well as the required job of snowplows and gritters. Solar energy aside, how about wind? According to the US Department of Energy, if wind turbines were fully harvested in just 3 of America's 50 states, the energy cultivated would be enough to power the whole of the USA. But wind farming is also not limited to the gigantic turbines which most of us are aware of. We could be utilising vertical axis wind turbines with magnetic bearings, which cause the wind vane to levitate, reducing the friction and cutting wind speeds usually hindered by gears. You could literally blow on these things and create energy. So what happens when we place vertical axis turbines inside street lamps? Well, when a vehicle drives past, it creates a gust of wind, and in turn powers the lights. Then we have tidal power. According to the Crown Estate, the UK has the potential to harness up to 153 gigawatts, accounting for more than 20% of our current energy usage. They also found a potential 27 gigawatts from wave energy. And then of course, we have geothermal power.
So here's the Earth. In countries like Canada and the United States, seasons come and go. In the summer months it can be quite warm, and in the winter very cold. While the temperature of the surface of the Earth changes with the seasons, the temperature of the ground below the surface does not. Even at just 2 meters or 6 feet under the ground, it is about 15 degrees Celsius or 60 degrees Fahrenheit all year round. Geothermal takes advantage of this consistent temperature and uses it to heat and cool homes. So how does it work? First, a large hole is made into the ground and filled with a series of pipes. A special heat-absorbing fluid constantly runs through the pipes. In the winter, heat from the ground is absorbed into the pipes and pushed upwards, where it can be circulated throughout the house. In the summer, the process is reversed. Heat from the house is absorbed into the pipes and pushed downwards, where it can be stored within the cooler earth. So what are the benefits of geothermal heating? Well, for one, you can save a lot of money. Geothermal uses way less energy to operate, and this means a heating bill that is up to 80% lower than that of a traditional heating system. Secondly, geothermal doesn't run on fossil fuels like oil or gas, and therefore produces significantly less greenhouse gases. So look into geothermal today for a cleaner and sustainable source of energy.
As well as heating homes, geothermal is being used to convert heat into energy. And in a 2006 MIT study, geothermal was found to have an energy potential of 2,000 zenojoules. The total global energy consumption is currently around 1/2 a zenojoule per year, signifying 4,000 years of planetary power from geothermal alone, meaning the powering of an automated economy is simply a non-issue. But then there's the other argument regarding machine maintenance. It is now a general assumption that machines are constantly in need of repairs. And, well, this is true, at least with respects to market products. See, within the market, there is planned obsolescence. In order to maintain cyclical consumption of goods, it is crucial that products have a short lifespan.
The biggest issue and potential flaw to me over this invention is the fact that it's not an invention or a product that actually will be purchased more than once. You kind of almost want your product to break occasionally.
If we were to remove our dependency on cyclical consumption, we could instead create products to last. The only threat to a machine's lifespan would be atmospheric erosion. And this is why in the future, all machine parts will be treated with a super hydrophobic coating which uses nanotechnology to repel water and refined oils. Even when we do recognise the implications of mass mechanization, people tend to think, not my job, not the job I happen to have spent 4 years studying for, the business my family left me, the product I've invested my life savings in. That job will be around forever. I'm sorry to tell you that that is merely wishful thinking. And yes, your job too is vulnerable. Even if not directly threatened by automation, we are all affected by the mechanisms of causation. When a store fails, the products on those shelves, thus manufacturing, is affected. Just as when a product becomes obsolete, the stores in turn suffer. Also, when 50% of household products are either redundant or freely downloadable, what do you think will happen to the world of advertising? Autonomous cars eliminate the need for a driving license, thus the need for driving schools and instructors. And since accidents are near impossible, there will be a reduction in time with car insurance companies, repair shops, and of course, taxable offences relating to speeding fines and the like. And as the overall state of the economy weakens, commercial banks, real estate, and government-funded institutions such as education and healthcare will all be affected. So if by now you're asking, what's the real solution to the unemployment problem? My question is, what's the problem? The loss of a job is historically synonymous with degradation and poverty, yet we're looking at a future in which organic food and clean energy are cultivated with levels of abundance never before seen. Homes can be constructed within a day without any human involvement. All tools, aesthetic objects, and even medicine are designed, downloaded, customized, and printed on demand, either made from in your home or delivered via autonomous vehicles, which have improved road safety and reduced travel time. Then of course there's better healthcare, free education, less waste, and this is all to say nothing of the explosion in entertainment. The real solution to our problems have nothing to do with capitalism, socialism, communism, the free enterprise system, or any other sub-related group, for these are market economies. And as the financial market dies, we need to transition into a new, sustainable economy, one which is designed around ensuring our survival, meaning we must all have equal access to life-supporting needs without the ridiculous number game or any monetary exchange. We have the technology and the understanding today of how to scientifically orient our resource distribution. But of course, these types of transitions are never easy. There is nothing preventing a temporary period of mass poverty and starvation. In fact, there's nothing preventing us from holding on to this outdated, competition-based, infinite growth market economy until we have nothing left. By raising awareness of our technological potential and having the population understand the imminent need to transition, we can alleviate the fear usually generated through ignorance and allow the change to happen with little opposition. Now, luckily for us, I don't have to sit here and propose setting up a mass awareness raising campaign. It already exists. With over 500,000 members and hundreds of chapters worldwide, the Zeitgeist movement is the largest grassroots movement in history and has set out to raise awareness as to our true potential on this planet, while at the same time advocating a transition into a new, sustainable, global paradigm. simultaneously arrived at the decision to go out there and get a job. But maybe it has something to do with technology. In '93, Microsoft released their Windows NT operating system. Intel developed the first Pentium processor. And the National Center for Supercomputing Applications released version 1 of Mosaic, which was to be the world's first internet web browser. It's estimated that the internet grew throughout the 90s at a rate of 100% per year, subsequently improving global communication and creating many job possibilities within developed countries. Now, to remove any speculation as to whether or not this was the reason for the growth in jobs, it should be noted that throughout the 90s, our employment trends were almost identical to the US trends, and in a 2007 paper, a team of Harvard economists found the economic expansion of the 90s was in fact driven by the increased efficiency in the production of IT, including computing, software, and telecommunications. The birth of the internet had propelled us into a new age and saved us from further degradation. However, while emerging technology is responsible for having created many new jobs, technology has been known to replace jobs throughout history. When employment stagnated in 2001, this wasn't because technology had stopped expanding or that there weren't any new ideas. The stagnation is simply because technology is ever improving, and the amount of new jobs were being matched by the number of job losses. Economists will always deny that technology replaces jobs. It's called the lump of labour fallacy. Essentially, it's the notion that technology merely redistributes human workers. The jobs which become obsolete or automated simply allow humans to explore new sectors, perhaps even invent new industries which have yet to be conceived of. Well, while this idea may have been partially true in the past, the argument simply doesn't hold up anymore. Computers these days are much smaller, faster, and durable, with ever-increasing mobility, dexterity, and artificial intelligence. They also become cheaper as time goes on. Moore's law demonstrates how computer processing power doubles approximately every 18 months. So, even if we were to create new jobs, why are we pretending we would give these jobs to humans? So, what does the government have to say about all this? Well, in June of 2011, not knowing what to do with the increasing unemployment, they invested £5 billion in the Welfare to Work scheme, also known as the Work Programme. This 5-year programme promises to help 2.4 million people find and secure long-term employment by paying private companies to do the work of actually looking for jobs on behalf of their unemployed clients. 1 year later, the Department for Work and Pension released the figures. Turns out the work programme was a complete failure. Only 3.4% of all those who signed up to the programme actually found work. 3.4%. Let's just put that into context. What percentage of people looking for work gained employment without the help of the programme? 1%? 2%? Well, the figures from the same period show 5.5%. That's right. If you're assigned to the programme, you are statistically less likely to find a job. Now, the failure of the work programme can be largely attributed to the lack of available jobs. But perhaps there's another factor. In joining the programme, life is all about survival, and we never really know how long each of us have on this planet. But our job as a species is to persevere and eliminate anything which may threaten our survival. So what's the biggest threat you can think of? Pollution, disease, natural disasters? You know, looking around, the powers that be seem to have identified some pretty nasty threats. And so we have the war on terror, the war on crime, the war on drugs, the war on cancer. But when do we ever think about our basic life support needs? We usually don't have to because, luckily for us, we have a system. A system whereby the cost of living can be earned. You can gain employment and work for money, which of course provides access to food, to water, to shelter. And it's a good thing we have this system, because without money, you're as good as dead. But if you're without a job, no need to worry, because, yeah, again, we have a system. If you're out of work, for whatever reason, simply apply for government aid. See, all the people with jobs pay taxes. And since the government understands that a certain level of unemployment is to some degree to be expected, they simply dip into some of that tax money and hand it over to those without jobs through a magical process called redistribution. But it kinda makes you wonder, if this is our big solution to unemployment, where's the threshold? What level of unemployment can we really sustain? And what would happen if all these jobs suddenly disappeared?
The world is facing an urgent challenge and needs to create, listen to this number, needs to create 600 million jobs to generate growth and maintain social cohesion.
Defence giant BAE Systems has confirmed it's cutting almost 3,000 jobs at sites across the country.
Tata Steel, which employs 19,000 people in its UK steel business, has announced it is cutting 900 jobs around the UK.
Another blow to the region's economy today as the energy giant E.ON announced that 600 jobs are to go at a call centre in Essex.
The Pfizer facility in Kent, the world's biggest drugs company, runs the UK's largest foreign-owned research and development facility. It will close entirely with the loss of most of 2,400 jobs.
Ford has announced to trade union representatives that it will cease manufacturing cars in the UK after more than 100 years.
Japan's Honda is to cut around 800 jobs at its plant near Swindon in southwest England.
And we start tonight with news that the BBC has announced cuts and job losses across the region as part of a plan to make 20% savings.
Hundreds of police jobs have already been slashed, with thousands more under threat.
Kodak, the firm that invented the handheld camera and remains one of America's best-known brands, has filed for bankruptcy protection.
Rangers Football Club, one of the most famous in Britain, has announced it's gone into administration.
More than 300 of the 800 stores that Woolworths used to occupy.
Game still had brand status. If it didn't, these shop fronts would read Nordic Games. So, why is there so much failure in retail? Are we merely witnessing the natural boom and bust cycles of free market economics? Or are we actually witnessing a retail transition? Looking back, our high streets consisted of small, family-owned businesses. But the more companies grow, mergers and acquisitions become inevitable, and the smaller stores get phased out as they struggle to compete for market share, eventually being replaced by conglomerates. In much the same way, a natural evolution of retail is occurring again. Only this time the shops are being phased out, and the replacement is coming in the form of websites and software applications, which are conveniently accessible on the go with smartphones, and subsequently reduce our dependency on outlets such as high street banks, betting shops, and travel agencies. You've probably already witnessed technological unemployment on some level. For camera and film-oriented shops like Jessop's, it's not so hard to understand. Barely anyone with a modern phone is going to buy a disposable camera and pay money to have film developed. And there probably aren't too many people with 8-megapixel camera phones who also require digital cameras. Due to advancing technology, these stores have suddenly become specialist stores. Their customers now having to mainly consist of serious photographers. For music, video and game stores, There are 5 main threats here. 1. Supermarkets. Supermarkets are selling a lot of the same products, and most of the time cheaper. 2. Online stores like Amazon. They also offer good deals with the added comfort of 24-hour browsing and, of course, item delivery. 3. Pawn shops like cash converters. They get away with selling entertainment at a second-hand rate, making them even cheaper than the supermarkets. 4. Online digital downloads and streaming, with apps like iTunes and Netflix, conveniently accessible through smart TVs, gaming consoles, PCs, and most phone and tablet devices. But let's not forget about number 5, good old-fashioned piracy. With the advancements of fibre optic broadband, you can now download entire movies in a matter of minutes. Not that I'm suggesting any of you do that, of course. That would be illegal. I'm just saying it's easier and faster than going to the shops, waiting on the postman, or signing into the Netflix account on the PS3. As an aside, if any part of you is enraged at the thought of all these immoral people illegally sharing media, why not aim some of that authentic aggression at the idea of a society which distributes digital entertainment in physical form? The wastefulness of this would be equivalent to having a unique physical address in order to access each and every website in existence. But perhaps you like the plastic cases, and what's wrong with that? Well, the case itself is made from polypropylene, while the clear film sleeve is made from polyester. By bonding these different plastic materials together, it makes them almost impossible to properly recycle on large scale. So when the plastic rips, breaks, or even just gets old and wasted, they have to either be buried in landfills or incinerated, which of course produces toxic chemicals. If you find a job, you forfeit your right to minimum wage employment, and in place you are subsidised with an amount equivalent to job seekers allowance, making the work programme essentially a paid slavery scheme, excused under the guise of gaining experience. In late 2012, university graduate Kate Riley disputed the legality of the programme after being assigned to stack shelves in Poundland. Initially, her appeal was rejected. However, after further appeal, by 2013, 3 judges had ruled the regulations under which most of the back-to-work schemes were created are unlawful. Now, whatever the government's response to this ruling will be, they will not stop in their efforts to resolve the threat of unemployment. But let's face it, unemployment is not a threat to this system for the reasons we are usually given by mainstream outlets. Forget all the noise about economic recession, benefit cheats, immigration, or the idea that people are simply too lazy to look for a job. Automation, thus technological unemployment, is a mathematical inevitability of a system based on perpetual growth. And this pending eventuality is vastly misunderstood by the majority. And not just the majority of voters. There isn't a single politician who acknowledges, let alone understands the implications of technological unemployment. And what's worse, when human beings don't understand something, that's where fear comes from. We fear what we don't understand, and we fight what we don't understand.
Okay, I have a very concrete question for you, because you're getting wrapped up in this money and regulators and who is at fault. Technological automation is replacing jobs at the moment, and it has been forever. It's doubling every year. That's the rate, regardless of what financial system you have and what regulators you put in that place. So, without jobs as a basis for the economy, it's not really a question, more of a statement. Your system is going to be obsolete, and in fact, you're very lucky that you've been working this long, because you get to get out at the last floor. It's going away.
Yeah, but on the other side of the coin, I fear for my children.
Absolutely, absolutely. So why are you a fan of the banks then?
Everybody's job.
In recent times, high street shops have been disappearing at staggering rates, taking thousands of jobs with them. First Quench Retailing, Woolworths, Hawkins Bazaar, D2 Jeans, Officers Club, Focus DIY, Blacks, La Senza, Best Buy Europe, Clinton Cards, Barrett's, Game Station, Comet, Optical Express, JJB Sports, Oddbins, Game Group, HMV, Jessop's, Ethel Austin, Blockbuster, and more. Now, it's obvious some of these stores have not disappeared entirely. Many have moved into warehouse distribution, and their stores still exist in the form of websites. You may also be wondering why I have included game in this list, since there are in fact game stores in the high streets today. Well, I do so to make a point. See, in 2012, when Game went bust, the Swedish Nordic Games acquiesced the Game Group, acquiring the brand as well as the company's stores and employee contracts. But this is actually a different company altogether. Game wasn't resurrected through strategical advertising, market booms, or stern administrative decisions. The company we all knew as Game went bust. It lost. But
it's still standing empty more than a year and a half after it collapsed at the end of 2008.
More retailers are expected to go bust over the next few months.
All 187 outlets are to be shut with the loss of almost 1,400 jobs. The administrator said it is apparent that we cannot continue to trade. It was once Britain's biggest sports retailer, but today JJB Sports announced plans to go into administration.
6,500 jobs are at risk after the electrical retailer Comet announced it's going into administration.
More than 4,000 jobs at risk after HMV announced that it was going into administration. It follows other chains.
It's Blockbuster. It's become the latest casualty on the high street this week. A quarter of its stores are going to close. More than 700 people are going to be made redundant.
There's serious doubts now about the future of around 6,000 jobs in the UK after the company asked for its shares to be suspended last Wednesday.
Former Stands employees have come to the decision to occupy the store as a direct consequence of the actions of management.
A buyer hasn't been found. The group currently employs a total of nearly 4,000 staff.
Taiwan's IT giant Foxconn announced it plans to replace up to 500,000 human workers with robots in the next 3 years.
It's called Scan and Shop. Customers love it. Very simple system.
Each load is almost 300 tons. But look closely, there's no one behind the wheel.
The facility boasts the first robotic system in the UK to deliver supplies such as linen and food, and an automated robotic pharmacy.
井上さん、ミルクティーですね。岩下さん、オレンジジュースですね。
This isn't the first time unemployment has been a threat to this system. 20 years ago, unemployment accounted for 10% of the UK's population. It marked one of the worst recessions in our history, with significant waves of rioting. However, in '93, unemployment took a turn. Somehow the jobs came back and things got better. This growth in employment is just what we needed. However, it only lasted till 2001. Then the rate stagnated, then increased. By 2009, we were back to around 8%. But it's reassuring to see the recent trends of unemployment have slowed since then. Or at least it would be reassuring if it weren't for this. This chart shows the trends of part-time versus full-time employment. Notice how the increase in part-time employment runs almost parallel to the decrease in full-time employment. So where one person may have been working, say, a 40-hour week contract, now two people would each be contracted 20 hours. And funnily enough, this crossover section occurred in 2009. So because technically more people are employed, the rates falsely imply a slight slowing down of job loss. But in reality, the amount of available work is shrinking, and the economy is only getting worse. So what happened last time we were in this mess? Let's go back to 93. What changed? Was it an orderly street protest which brought back the jobs? Perhaps it was some well thought out policy from Parliament that changed things. Maybe everyone just stopped being lazy and simultaneously